The fourth prince of the Kakin Empire has never been slandered anywhere near as bad as what Togashi just did to him. Hello, and welcome back to Suckwar Central. My name is CJ, and after this chapter, I feel pretty justified in never really buying into all the hype behind fourth prince Psoriasis. This chapter gave us a real look into his psyche and Nen abilities that we've never gotten before, and I think, for me, it's settled that this guy is, for all intents and purposes, a genuine loser. His Nen ability is ass, his talent is overhyped, his plan is mid, and 90% of all the things that have ever made him look cool in the series are the result of catastrophically good luck and good genetics. So let's dive right in, with a refresher on Psoriasis' ability, as well as a ton of new information about how it functions. So we officially properly know and can sort of define this whole thing as an actual Nen ability. The activation requirements are that the prince both closes his eyes and activates Zetsu. The order doesn't matter, but he has to do both. As soon as he meets these, he sees his ephemeral 10 seconds, and then he can decide to proceed how he likes. If he keeps his eyes closed and maintains Zetsu, time starts to move, and he continues to see the future while the future he saw starts to play out in front of him. So, he can keep seeing into the future while acting in real life, but the drawback is his eyes are closed, so it could be a little disorienting. Alternatively, he can keep the illusion going while looking around reality if he opens his eyes, but keeps his Zetsu going. To me, this confirms that he cannot see more than 10 seconds ahead, and his words to Salkov being similar to Benjamin's were indeed a coincidence, despite many people insisting to the contrary. So I guess the question is, if he then closes his eyes once again after the ability has been running for some time, does he get another ephemeral 10 seconds? Or does that only happen when he meets both of the activation requirements at the same time from the start? To my knowledge, he doesn't address it or test it even once, so either I've missed something, which is entirely possible, or his range of critical thinking is even narrower than it seemed. This is something he really should have tested, given what happens with Theta later in the chapter. Something I've come to realize is that his incredible focus doesn't always translate to insight. I mean, think about the main example of his talent from a young age, the gun disassembly training record he shattered. That's less a feat of genius and more one of practice and focus. It doesn't require much innovation when it's literally just a repetitive motion. Psoriasis' learning of Nen has been much the same, in that he very quickly perfected the ability through insane dedication and focus. But while the fourth prince was focusing on assembling and disassembling his gun, his classmates at the military academy were learning to aim, fire, and reload. Psoriasis literally spent all of his time on a relatively useless task for the sake of vanity, and I think he might be doing the exact same thing with his Nen ability. In any case, we go on to learn that Psoriasis has certain rules he needs to abide by while his ability is active that, quite frankly, neuter the capabilities we thought he had. I mean, while maybe he couldn't touch Nen users, I think we all thought he could at least pop a cap in normal people, or maybe poison them with TSK-17. However, based on what we see here, I really don't think he can. He's just a passive observer, and the extent of what he can do is take objects before other people touch them. I will say this makes me think my crackpot theory about Tyson and Tebeppa has some merit to it. For those who don't recall, I theorized that they were going to formulate a cure to TSK-17. Psoriasis was going to take it himself, and they would believe they had drunk it and it was simply a dud that had failed to save them, even though they had not in fact taken it because Psoriasis stole it in the illusion. That is very much still a thing that he could do with his Nen ability, but otherwise, he's extremely limited, unable to take anything from anyone unless they put it down for a moment. He can't even disarm his opponents, and as for TSK-17, that's literally a biological weapon. The same way the bullets he fires just bounce right off of Vantine, I think the same would happen if he tried to poison somebody with TSK-17 while the illusion is active. Also, we get confirmation that he can't manipulate the illusion or will the illusion to deviate from what he would naturally do. In other words, his actions in the illusion cannot be based on what he learns from his ability. So that's another point in favor of the idea that his words being similar to Benjamin's was in fact a coincidence. Of course, as Psoriasis points out, all of this can be changed through practice, but much like Zhang Lei, I don't think he's going to live long enough to get the best use of his ability. The fourth prince has made a great many small and minor mistakes over the course of the story, but they're slowly adding up and they will eventually bury him alive. Also, this panel of him chucking a water bottle at Selkov's head is frying me. He's acting like a petulant child, which is what he is at heart, of course. Anyway, we get an explanation of his second Nen Beast, and hey, I was kinda right about this thing. I theorized that it functioned as a battery, and was very linked to his ability, and that all his future sight visions are from its point of view. Given what we now know and the additional future visions we saw in this chapter, I believe this is exactly it. That said, I believed it to be akin to a security camera, when in fact it's actually closer to a Wi Fi router. So, instead of the security camera, I will from here on out refer to this fellow as Comcast, because just like a similarly named company, it's now going to be tracking its owner's movements in their own home. God, I love being alive in 2026, don't you? So, once again, we get a cute little graphic explaining the ability, and damn, this thing is really not as good as we all thought. In essence, Psoriasis can only maintain his illusion while remaining within a certain distance of where Comcast is. In other words, where he was when he activated the Nen ability. Even worse, people outside the range of the ability don't even see the illusion. This means not only is he weak to bombs, area attacks, and the like as we suspected, but the guy could be taken out by a sniper from a distance if he's in an open area. So far, his ability has been amazing for the relatively small quarters he has on Tier 1, but as he leaves his room and touches, well, not grass, but whatever the boat's made of, his ability is going to be significantly less useful. So, to keep his ability going, he has to remain in the same general area, so it's not good for escaping. But he also can't really affect people in the illusion, so it's not that good for fighting either. All he can do is sit and watch without participating. Yeah, this guy's a massive cuck. Togashi gave him a cuckhatsu. And I think all these panels he suddenly has jerking off his ego, talking about how he's going to use his net ability to control the world, how he's so perfect, how God should be grateful for his existence, being in the same chapter where we learn he's actually nowhere near as powerful as we thought, and his Nen ability isn't even that impressive by the standards of what we've seen novice Nen users do in the series, and his critical thinking is even less impressive than our lowest estimations. It is a very intentional choice by Togashi. Yes, Psoriasis is talented and smart, but my god, is his ego absolutely fucking insufferable and completely out of control. This dude is straight up delusional. Meanwhile, I'd put him in the bottom half of Nen users in the series, and I'm not even joking. This dude is actually a Gedo victim. And just to emphasize and pile on the weaknesses we didn't know about before, if this dude stubs his toe, bangs his elbow on a door frame, or has IBS, his Zetsu is just fucking over. Psoriasis is a Tonpa victim. God, this is really not that good an ability in its current state. Yes, he's a prodigy, but so were Gon and Killua, and they still got their shit promptly rocked by the Phantom Troop in every conceivable way during the York New City arc. Psoriasis needs to calm the hell down. Maybe in a year he could afford a fraction of this self-confidence, but my guy is headed for the rudest of awakenings imaginable, and it will be so satisfying. So, we see that he actually needed Salkov's pistol because his illusion self wanted something to provoke Benjamin, and then we see some other bits of Chapter 417 from his point of view. I don't have too much to say, other than damn, he actually kind of looks good in these panels. I love his haircut, and oh Jesus, that dude works out.
Nice ass. Do not lust in your heart. Jesus, you're right.
Also, it's frying me that he's so upset by Benjamin not taking the time to kill him slowly and torture him. Once again, this dude's ego and narcissism are reaching the most ridiculous degrees. Now, anyone who wants to say, hey, look, he is smart, he correctly deduces that Benjamin is acting too hastily and is on a timer. Go reread the previous chapter, Tobeppa figures it out too, Psoriasis ain't special. I also want to highlight this panel, right after his ego tripping, where he looks like he's pointing the gun at himself. I do think this is Togashi giving us a little hint that the fourth prince is in fact sowing the seeds of his own demise with his general behavior and lack of insight here. He talks about how his Nen battery can last about 4 hours, but his ruse might be uncovered sooner, and he comes up with this plan to write a will asking for a closed casket and to fill his coffin with guns to simulate his corpse and have it delivered to the king without anyone suspecting anything. And speaking of corpse delivery, this video wouldn't be possible without a word from today's sponsor, HelloFlash. Are you a Chimera ant who's been reclassified as a magical beast following the East Gorteau conflict? Are you struggling to adapt to your new life among human society? Do normal meals just not do it for you? Do you miss the sweet and succulent taste of human meat? HelloFresh is just the service for you. With daily nutritious deliveries of human meat, HelloFresh will help you live your best life and adjust to a world that wasn't made with Chimera ants in mind. All of HelloFresh's human meat is ethically sourced by the RG Foundation from the Kakin Empire. I don't know what all this stuff about fakers is, but HelloFresh's meats are so good you'll definitely want to be back for seconds. So what are you waiting for? Get your health back on track and sign up for HelloFresh today. Remember to use code SuckMoreCentral to get 44% off your first 4 months. In any case, it's back to your regularly scheduled Hunter x Hunter yapping from here on out. So, here we have Salkov reading out Psoriasis's fake will, which includes a wish not to have his body seen, because of course that would ruin the illusion, and he uses the excuse that Benjamin has horribly disfigured his corpse. I do find it pretty funny that he's gone with that reasoning. It does make sense, but everyone's like, yeah, Benjamin would do that. And once again, it shows how Benjamin's impulsiveness has shot himself in the foot. If he weren't the person he is, that excuse would not have worked, and Psoriasis's plan would be that much weaker. I will take a moment to give Psoriasis a bit of praise here, despite slandering him all chapter, because the one thing he is very good at is using people's weaknesses against them, and this is just another example of that. Of course, this tiny point of praise is undone when he realizes, damn, I didn't consider all the possibilities. Oopsies, teehee, I need to test my ability out a bit more. Like, dude, that's what I was saying. Before putting all your marbles into perfecting this one ability, you should have tested its mechanics. While he was incredibly focused on mastering Zetsu, even when the returns on investment for his training started getting more and more marginal, he should have taken a lot more time to experiment with his ability's mechanics. I mean, the guy had several days, and he only tested the absolute basics of how it all works. Like I've said, this calls back to the gun disassembly training, where he gets way too focused on the wrong thing that isn't actually going to help him when push comes to shove. And then, Psoriasis's treatment of Vantine is incredibly stupid. This dude is clearly intensely loyal to the Fourth Prince. I would personally kill to have a right-hand man like this. And yeah, Salkov didn't even try to protect his boss. So given what he knows, Vantine's crash out here is entirely justified, if a bit too heated, and it shows touching devotion to the prince. But Psoriasis finds this absolutely pathetic, and throwing a temper tantrum shoots him in the head 3 times, even knowing full well it won't do anything. My god, maybe Psoriasis is the son of Beyond, because he's even more of a man-child than Beyond Netero is. He kvetches that Vantine just wants something to complain about, and holy projection, that's literally what he's doing. Plus, these gunshots just leave evidence behind. We have a panel of the bullets falling, and Psoriasis doesn't clean them up. This could be yet another clue about what his ability is that's going to lead his enemies to figuring it out. Anyway, Psoriasis thinks about how he should trade Vantine for Salkov, and is once again sowing the seeds of his own demise. Salkov isn't fit to be captain. All he does is nod, say yes to the prince, and talk about how impressive his talent is, not to mention plotting against him. Vantine, on the other hand, is a shrewd individual who does his best to win over Melody in the Justice Bureau and is fiercely loyal to his boss. But Psoriasis is a narcissist who just wants a mindless yes man. He should have told Vantine about his plan, not Salkov, and that is yet another way in which his narcissism is crippling him. So we see Theta, and thank fucking god she's alright. And Psoriasis is talking about some kind of crazy plan to fake a rampage and flee his room, and like, sure man. I really think there are better and easier ways to escape without drawing any attention to himself, but it's a lot harder for me to visualize the 3-dimensional space he's working in with only the manga panels Togashi decides to show us, so this might actually be his only option, and I'll give him a pass for now. And then, we get this stuff about different routes to the Justice Bureau, and I have to say, I think it's a nice little detail that every public office in Kakin has special, more efficient entrances just for royalty. They're not even going to be used 99% of the time, but even so, every office in Kakin has to have one, and they're royal exclusive. It's a nice, quick little way to quickly reinforce for the 1000th time just how ingrained in Kakinese culture this overwhelming royal privilege is, and stuff like this shows how many of these princes came to be as egomaniacal as they are. Also, I love Psoriasis's disguise. He looks like when he dies, the storyteller gets a minion ability. He looks like the Riddler from the Batman. So this dude is going to the Justice Bureau, and like, why? Why on earth is he doing this? The smartest move for him is to lay low and wait for his chance to strike, not go to the fucking Justice Bureau. He's gonna be surrounded by people like Benjamin, Mizaistom, and Botobai. Prime time to get his abs absolutely thrashed. And I really do not think he can or should try to fight Benjamin right now. Also, poor Fugetsu. She's apparently holed up in the Justice Bureau, and whatever insanity goes down there, with more and more ingredients being added to this nasty tragedy stew, is going to probably force her to evacuate, and I mean, I hope she makes it out. I really think that Psoriasis going there is a bad play, though. He's already put all his eggs into the develop my Nen talents as rapidly as possible basket. Not the best plan, but it's too late to deviate. The smart move is for him to find a quiet corner of the ship and to escape and to continue practicing Nen, using his ability to flawlessly evade soldiers as necessary. He needs to speedrun his talents and get ready to punch above his weight class. It is way too early for him to be seeking this kind of smoke. That said, it's possible he has another motive for trying to beat Benjamin to the Justice Bureau. He's very interested in Melody, and if I'm not mistaken, she's probably being held there, as Psoriasis well knows. If his plan is to swoop in and coerce Melody into helping him assassinate Benjamin, you know what? I'll eat my words and admit that's a pretty good plan. So, Theta's about to take a look inside the coffin, and Salkov stops her, warning her about the Nen Beast and saying that this might get her in trouble, and he does this right in front of the fourth prince. First of all, props to Salkov for thinking of that, because I sure didn't, and secondly, Psoriasis is once again a fucking idiot. He completely disregards Salkov's words here, instead focusing on Theta, the little pervert. If the guy were paying attention to the Nen Beast given to him by the Seed Urn, or Salkov, this would make it ridiculously obvious that Salkov and Theta are working together to betray him, but he hasn't been paying attention to either of these things and makes no note of it. And I really do think he just didn't notice, because at this point, most of what he thinks, he just says out loud knowing nobody can hear him. Anyway, then we get to this section where Theta appears to be able to see Psoriasis for a second, and oh boy do I have thoughts about this. So there are a lot of ways to interpret this scene. One is that Theta is traumatized by the previous jump scare. She's expecting, just like last time, for him to appear behind her as she examines his supposed corpse, and it's that haunted look that really makes the prince think he's seen her. Because really, what else could she be looking at? Other than Psoriasis, there's nothing in that general direction. However, an idea I want to float is that Theta can, in fact, see him and is pretending not to be able to. Before we get into how she might be able to see him, I do want to address why her behavior makes sense, assuming she can see him. Based on last time, as well as his current behavior, in this world where she sees him, Theta is probably safely assuming that he doesn't realize she sees him. She doesn't comprehend his ability, doesn't know its conditions or how it works, and wants to hear Salkov's testimony before she jumps to any conclusions or into any action. Therefore, now is not a good time to attack Psoriasis, and even if she did, any sudden moves would cause Benjamin's soldiers to jump on her. So, while Theta's glance could just be explained by trauma, I do believe it makes sense in the world where she somehow sees him. So, yeah, with that out of the way, let's explore how Theta might be able to see the fourth prince in his little cut corner. I have two explanations, and they both involve Nen. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Nen users in Zetsu can't see aura, right? Zetsu closes off all the aura nodes in someone's body, but Wing says that opening the aura nodes in one's eyes is what allows them to see aura. In other words, while Zetsu makes someone extra perceptive and lets them feel aura exceptionally well if they're looking for it, they can't physically see it. Thus, Theta could be using her Nen ability to see Psoriasis here, and we don't know what her ability is, but given that she's employed for the Succession War and seems to know a lot about her boss and his crimes, it is my speculation that her Hatsu is probably something recon-based or espionage-ish. When she tried killing him the first time, she had no reason to use it, but this time, knowing he can fake his death, she might have decided to use her Hatsu, and Psoriasis could be unable to see it since the nodes in his eyes are closed. It could be something as simple as enhancing one's sense of sight, the same way Dogman enhances his nose. Of course, there might be an even simpler explanation: Gyo. To my understanding, Psoriasis doesn't even know about the existence of Gyo because Theta never taught him. It might not even occur to him that Nen users can redirect aura to their eyes to see what's hidden, and there have also been little hints of foreshadowing that make me think that this might be the case, or at the very least, Togashi wants to do something with Gyo in the near future. For example, Psoriasis stresses that this is a very basic form of his ability, level 1 as he puts it. For something like that, it would make sense for Gyo to see right through it, especially when the prince doesn't even know Gyo exists, so how could his subconscious plan a countermeasure? And secondly, using Gyo to see hidden things is a concept Togashi just brought up last chapter with Benjamin after having no references to it for a very, very long time. It's just a little hint to remind us, hey, pretty much any Nen user who knows about it can turn on special vision mode if it occurs to them. And I bet, in Zetsu, Psoriasis could sense the aura flowing to Theta's eyes if he knew what to feel for. But he's got no way to know that, And if so, this could be another glaring weakness in his ability that he doesn't even know to account for. And like, with his talent, I'm sure it would be an incredibly easy problem to fix if he knew it was a problem to begin with. And yet, if I'm right, his myopic focus on one aspect of Nen and his eagerness to prove himself despite inexperience are going to be what do him in. This is kind of the theme of the arc, honestly, with Benjamin's soldiers being too focused on their Hatsus, with Camilla being too focused on postmortem Nen, and now with Psoriasis being too focused on what he's stumbled into. It's always the people who practice the fundamentals of Nen who actually get shit done, and that's why the Hunter Association is going to always be superior to these Kakanese jackasses when it comes to Nen. Also, as Theta walks off, Psoriasis goes, "Oh, of course not. Like, oh, of course she can't see me." He doesn't even consider any of what I did, and that's not me calling myself smart, by the way. I think this is just the most obvious thing to consider in a situation like this, and Psoriasis absolutely could have if he weren't so egotistical. Like, I don't expect him to figure out the concept of yo, but he could at the very least consider that she might have a Nen ability which lets her see him. For God's sake, he has an ability that gives him special visions. That's like one of the two things he knows for a fact Nen abilities can do, and he doesn't even think about it. Also, Psoriasis gets turned on by being ignored, and like, how much clearer can Togashi make it? He is using every tool in his narrative toolbook to call this guy a cock. Jesus Christ, man. And then I want to point out this line about how Theta might be able to get him to undo his Zetsu. In Voracious Drake's translation, he talks about how Zetsu here is written with kana that can also mean love, and the verb ubo is used, which means to steal or snatch. In Japanese, as Mr. Drake points out, this has highly sexual connotations of stealing a first kiss or someone's virginity, even. Voracious Drake, as such, decided to go with the translation pop my Zetsu, like pop my cherry, which is a fine translation, but I have to say it'd be funnier to go with something like bust my Zetsu. Anyway, off goes the fourth prince, trying to beat Benjamin to the Justice Bureau, and off I go, hitting another space on my bingo board because Psoriasis definitely got freaky this chapter. With all that being said, I quite enjoyed chapter 418, and I'm glad it came out before the video on the fourth prince's psychology that I have planned for September, because it gave me quite a lot of juicy new info to work with. I hope you'll join me next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.